end of last year, December 23rd, I did my top 5 takeaways for that year. This year, I just want to look through a number of these episodes that we captured.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to the next episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I am the host of Process Pioneers, and I want to wish you all, the Process Pioneers community, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. What a year it has been, 2022. Today, I want to recap the year more or less. I don't have a guest joining me. I hope that is okay. But I want to recap the year, go over a number of the key lessons that I've gleaned from these episodes. And I was actually having a look back through the episodes to see how many did we get through this year. And this is episode 41 for the year. We started off the year at approximately episode 100 over the previous 18 months. Another 41 episodes have been added to our Process Pioneers community this year. And let me tell you, we certainly had some fantastic guests in year 1 and year 2, or as you know, across, I don't know if you can say that's across a year and a half there. But this year, we certainly had some process experts, some process specialists, some key decision makers, some key influencers. So a lot to glean from in these episodes. So I'd love to walk through a few of them and some of my biggest takeaways. But if you've been following the series for a while, and there's 140 odd episodes there for you to tune into, I'd love to request. That sounds a bit strong, but if you could give us a rating and a review on any of our podcast channels, or actually just wherever you're listening to it right now. You might be on Spotify, you might be on Apple Podcasts, you might be on Google Podcasts, you might be watching this on YouTube. It would mean a lot to us if you liked the episode, rated, reviewed this episode or any of the previous episodes. Really what we want to do is promote the series and we can do with your help. And your help is going to help us get the series out to a wider community, a wider audience. We already received many great feedback about the various episodes. I have people that will message me privately, and they'll tell me how much they've been gleaning. And I know that many relationships have formed because of this series. So if you want to help us out, help us continue to promote business process management throughout the world, then that would help us immensely. Okay, so it's a little bit of a different podcast. So I feel like I'm out of my depth a little here. I'm certainly not taking center stage in the other episodes. I'm normally just facilitating the discussion, asking some good questions. But when you don't have someone joining you as a guest, you kind of have to fill in all the blanks and the gaps and stuff. So it's a little bit of a monologue for me, but I hope you get some value out of it. Anyways, let's dive into it. So end of last year, December 23rd, I did my top 5 takeaways for that year. This year, not so much sort of so structured like that. It's probably very similar takeaways, if I can say that. But I just want to look through a number of these episodes that we captured. Now, we kicked off this year with Dr. Marcel Vollmer. Now, Dr. Marcel was a partner and director at Boston Consulting Group, so in the big leagues, if you wanted to say that, and works with some of the world's largest organizations. And I think recalling my conversation with Dr. Marcel, he has a huge focus on liaising or discussing process management with senior leadership. The key thing I pulled out of that episode was it's all about the language that you're using. See, Dr. Marcel, he's all He's always about the results. He's always about the strategic objectives of the organization. And let's use that language. Let's actually use the language that's going to resonate with the people that we're trying to bring along the journey. And that's been a common theme throughout most of the episodes this year, I would say, is the language that we use. Because, and I've said it before, as process practitioners, sometimes we can get stuck and weighed down in the technical detail in the specifics of our craft without actually understanding that the person that we're talking to may resonate with different language. And we are going to be talking with many different people across the organization, because the fact of the matter is process touches all areas of an organization, from the frontline employees all the way through to the senior leadership and everyone in between. The thing is they're just using different language to describe the work that is being done. So that kicked us off in January. Then we had Jan Rayner. So two Europeans here, which is fantastic. Three Europeans actually to kick off the year. So in this podcast, we bring on guests from all around the world, from Europe, from America, from the APAC market, from Africa, the Middle East. We have people from all different continents joining us. No one from Antarctica yet. So if you know someone, please let me know. Would love to get in touch. So Uber as a process with Jan Rayner. So Jan, if you don't know him, he's a professor for information systems and digital innovation at the University of Hamburg. And in this conversation, we really focused on the future. We focused on innovation. We looked at these various startups that were really disrupting their industry. Uber as one example. Obviously, and if you know a bit of the background of the Uber process, the Uber startup, I should say, or the Airbnb startup, or any of these disruptive organizations that, whether you would deem them as success or not, it's, I guess, what we can say is they have disrupted traditional or industries that have been the same way for a long time. And so looking at Uber and how they, which they didn't come from the taxi industry, and the guys that created Airbnb didn't come from the hotel or the accommodation industry. So coming in from an outside perspective, how can we deliver a better experience to the customers? And ultimately, that results in a new process for the organization. And so I think there's something very significant we can pull or glean from that particular episode, in that where do we get inspired for our process? Where do we get inspired from for our process improvements, for our innovation? There's been many episodes, or maybe not many episodes, but certainly a few key ones where we've discussed innovation and how we need to stop making iterative, tiny tweaks to our processes. I actually had a conversation earlier today, another episode that we're going to release in the new year. And part of the conversation was around Blockbuster, and how Blockbuster wasn't going to defeat Netflix, as an example, by trying to tweak the processes of going to a shop front to get your DVDs or your VHS. Now that's going back. And so they needed to radically innovate. And Netflix, it wasn't an overnight success. If you know the story of Netflix, it took some time. There were many sort of failings along the way, but now look at where they are. Now, following on from that was Raphael Accorsi, Principal Director at Accenture. So again, works with many large organizations in regards to process transformation. And a big topic of conversation in this particular one was, how do you foster a culture that values process management, process optimization, understanding your processes? Again, oftentimes, and especially in this episode, it comes down to what keeps the people that you're bringing along the journey, when fostering this culture, what do they care about? What's important to them? How do you create that environment where people feel empowered to bring their own ideas and suggestions to the table? Because the people on the front line, they're the ones that are probably in the best position to identify what's working, what's not working, and how can we then improve. And the secret there, or the trick about that, or I guess the added benefit there, is that if these people are identifying opportunities for improvement, and they are also suggesting these improvements are being implemented, how much more is that person going to take ownership of this new process, as opposed to always feeling like they're just being told what to do by someone that's not in their position. And, through the many conversations I've had with different people in different organizations, it's bringing people along the journey is very key. So we'll keep moving along. Peter Heffer. So our first Australian-based conversation, Peter Heffer, working for an insurance company here in Australia. He's not Australian himself, but lives here now. And he is a business process management specialist. And they're at the beginning, or relatively at the beginning, of their process management journey. So it was fantastic to hear from Peter in regards to his prior experience, because, Peter is in that role to try and drive adoption for business process management, and he's doing a fantastic job. And it's going to be amazing to catch up with Peter in 6-12 months and to hear how that journey is tracking along. Then we had a conversation with Hassan Al-Humaydan, who is the consulting director at ES Consulting. And so this was a very powerful conversation. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this conversation was our most popular one for the year. Almost 1,000 views in a matter of, about 10 months or so. So tracking it at about 100 views every month, and that's just on the YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch more on all the audio apps as well. So if you want to watch one episode, and you just want to watch the one that's the most viewed, which is a good indicator of a good episode, but all the other episodes are fantastic and have their own nuggets of gold and wisdom there as well. You can watch my conversation with Hassan Al-Humaydan. So a big focus of this conversation was, what are the key drivers for an organization to adopt business process management? As a consulting director at ES Consulting, he works with a wide range of organizations and in the Middle East. And I'm probably going to maybe not get all of the details right, so I'll keep it relatively high level. But in the Middle East, the government has mandated, and I'm not particularly familiar with this area in terms of business process management, so forgive me if I don't get the facts exactly right. But the government has mandated that all organizations need to have a process management approach in place, being able to, display or prove what they do via process management. Obviously, one small aspect of it, but a process management approach that's across all government, especially all private or public. If I'm botching this, someone comment below and correct me. But there is a huge push there for business process management, is essentially what I'm saying. And so lots of opportunity for Hassan, and he is working with many large organizations there to improve the work that they are doing. Now, next conversation was with Sanja Normovic Popovic. We titled this episode "Walking in the Dark," because that is pretty much what you're doing when you don't have an understanding of your business processes. And Sanja, she works with many of New Zealand's largest banks, and so very much involved in establishing process management, helping to drive that adoption across many different organizations. Next episode was BPM is a means to an end. with Tiger Pillay. Really what we were, the main conversation there, as I mentioned, with some of these other prior episodes, is that what's the real outcome here? Why are we doing what we're doing? What's the purpose of business process management? If there isn't a purpose, if there isn't a clearly defined why, then everyone's going to get lost along the way. Motivation is going to be low. No one's going to want to buy into business process management to help meet their strategic objectives. So what is the reason for doing BPM? It's not a success to say we're doing it, but it's a success if you're able to meet your strategic objectives, and BPM is a tool to help you get there. Tiger Pillay works in the financial services industry predominantly, although has worked in many various industries, but financial services, and has a particular focus on superannuation at the moment. So if you have a question about process management, quality management, process compliance, anything to do with process transformation and superannuation here in Australia, at least, Tiger is your guy. Then we had a conversation with Damien Lumby, who is the head of process improvement at a leading independent school. So this was quite an interesting conversation. Not a typically large organization as we would normally engage with, but what does process improvement, process management look like at an education center? So that was a fantastic conversation. David Jennings was our next conversation. He is the founder of Systemology and System Hub. Now, obviously, in Process Pioneers, we talk with a lot of process practitioners that are involved in some way, shape, or form with relatively large, medium to large organizations, around the 500 employees plus. Is typically we're talking with people in this kind of domain, as well as those from the academic realm and things like that. David, he actually works a lot with organizations that are probably around your maybe startup to 50 people companies. So he's all about how can we, as small organizations with few employees, how can we already adopt this process-centric approach that's going to help us scale? So if you are interested in small businesses, you may be a consultant that's starting your own business and you want to glean a little bit from David and his experience from working with hundreds of small to medium-sized organizations, then that is an episode for you. I will say that most of these episodes probably are roughly anywhere between the 30 to 45, 30 to 40 minutes is probably the sweet spot. Some go a little bit longer. Obviously, we're only scraping the surface in each of these episodes. We are trying to tackle a few key topics and get their unique perspective and experience from the guests that I've brought onto the show. You may finish an episode and have some outstanding questions, as in some questions that we weren't able to answer or get around to. So what I would recommend you do is pop your questions in the comment section below you, whether you're watching this on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or on the different episodes, so we know which episodes the questions are relating to. Otherwise, connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure all of them have said yes. They are more than happy for you to connect on LinkedIn and ask your questions. If they didn't say that, then they probably just won't accept your friend request. But I don't think I've had anyone that said that they're not keen to connect with other industry experts. So put yourself out there. If you're in a role and you want to connect with other industry practitioners or professionals, have a listen through the podcast. If someone resonates with you, a certain approach resonates, reach out, connect with them, have your questions ready to go and start a conversation, because as I said, these episodes are short and there's going to be a lot more value if you continue sort of an ongoing relationship / conversation. Okay, so then moving on, and we won't dive into the episodes in too deep a detail. But with Rahul Bansodi, caught up with him, digital transformation architect, and big focus of our conversation was on technology being useless. And really that was a bit of a clickbait title, but really what we're trying to get across there is there are many organizations, they just chuck technology at problems, and the technology isn't giving them the results that they were expecting or that they're looking for. Oftentimes it can be tied back to a process related issue. You know, I had a conversation, I don't think it was this year, it might have been the previous year in 2021, but where I was talking with someone from a large telco, and they had deployed 180 bots. And I think the story goes that half the cases were being dropped, and that the bots were efficient, but they weren't effective. They were missing a lot of things, and so they ended up turning all the bots off because it was causing more chaos than what was, I guess, than what it was worth. And so a lot of money wasted there. And I've heard this time and time again, if you just dive into technology, and there's a lot of technology out there, there's lots of vendors, lots of things, robotic process automation, there's process mining, there's many different things here. You don't want to adopt technology for it to sit there collecting dust or getting used, but not actually delivering the results that you want. So the technology is useless, but it can be incredibly useful if you're embedding and adopting it in the right way. Okay, so next episode, Roger Perry, CEO of Bevington Group. No big change comes for free. Now, Roger and his team work with very large organizations throughout the ANZ region. So lots to glean from Roger in that episode. Ricardo Henriquez, an ocean of insights is the conversation that we dived into there, and that's particularly talking about process mining and how much diving into your data can deliver an ocean of insights, an ocean of opportunities that you can use to improve. And I think that's going to be a huge topic over the coming years, is how can we use the data in our systems to make better decisions. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do is make better decisions. Then we had quite a unique episode. This is another one I'd recommend. It was in April that we captured this one with Roger Tregear. This was our second episode with him. If you don't know Roger, he's a BPM consultant and process management expert, works throughout the world. We actually did a live session with Roger. We invited all of the Process Pioneers community onto the episode to throw their questions at Roger, and throw your questions you did, which was absolutely fun and exciting. We didn't get through all of the questions, but we made a good dent in that list. And next year in 2023, we are actually looking to do a lot more live sessions. So we're going to be letting you know when those are happening. So please get ready to jump on with your questions. We'll bring you into the call so you can ask your questions directly. And there's just a lot of excitement around these live episodes, and a lot of great sort of conversation back and forth. Okay, so moving on, Ekaterina Sabelnikova and Bart Hompes, so expert and research innovation consultants, and Bart being a process mining consultant. So again, this process mining topic comes up again. Another fantastic conversation there. It's actually based off one of their presentations they did at a recent conference. Chris Butterworth, specialist in lean manufacturing and continuous process improvement. Always blame the process. So if you've identified a pain point or a problem, it's oftentimes not to do with the people. It highly likely is to do with the process. So dive into that conversation if you want to tackle that topic a little bit further. Then we sat down with Alan Murrell, Director of Westcott Business Services. We can't boil the ocean. So looking at when you're starting off with business process management, what is critical for you to begin? to get your quick wins, your first wins, to celebrate those wins, to get further adoption and buy-in across the organization. Oftentimes, when adopting a BPM approach, an organization may try to map everything, and you've probably all heard how that ends up from many different case studies that have been done in the past, but essentially no real value is actually delivered, and it leaves the senior leaders scratching their heads, asking the question, why do we do all of this work? What was the point? So we can't boil the ocean. That's a great episode to dive into. Eduardo Chavez, founder and CEO of ECM Consulting Group, another consultant that works with some very large organizations. Roberto Gallo, we dive into showing quick wins, as I mentioned just before, with Alan Murrell. So showing quick wins, how can you prove the value of this approach as quickly as possible, as effectively as possible? Because people that haven't, if it's a new approach for your organization, when bringing people along the journey, they don't want to wait 12 months to decide whether this is worthwhile continuing investing into it. Obviously, you want to be able to prove greater value over time, but what are those smaller, quicker wins that you can do to prove that value and continue to drive that adoption? Okay, then we caught up with Atiq Mohammed, CEO and Lead Excellence Advisor at Advantix Process Quality Consultants, turning your waste into value. Pretty self-explanatory there. Then caught up with a LinkedIn influencer. Has been ranked by LinkedIn many times for his work in educating the LinkedIn community in various topics. Now, Anshuman Tiwari is the global head of delivery excellence at DXC Technology. And so in that conversation, that was ended up being quite a long conversation. We talked about why some companies succeed in implementing process management and others don't. What drives an organization to adopt process management, and what are some of the biggest challenges an organization faces when adopting process management? But that conversation with Anshuman, loved that conversation, had a great time, definitely recommend. Next conversation, I personally was very excited for this one with Gabriella Garlich. Now, Gabriella was working with Celonis previously, and currently is a manager at Deloitte Center for Process by Onyx, has moved from Europe to America, I believe. And so we really dive into that topic of process mining. Gabriella had 4 of the biggest wins with process mining. So we dive into that and what she has seen as being the biggest outcomes, the best outcomes when an organization adopts and implements process mining well. We've actually got another conversation with Gabriella coming up in a couple of weeks' time. That one's going to be a live episode. She has started a not-for-profit organization called Women in Process Mining, or WIPM, and we're going to invite Gabriella back on and her one of her partners in that not-for-profit to discuss, again, process mining. It is a very broad and diverse topic. Then we caught up with Mo Thander Win, who is the professor and head of Business Process Management Research Group. And we discussed the future of business process management, what that looks like. And when we touch on the future of BPM in most conversations, this one really focuses on, okay, what trends is Mo noticing? Mo has a huge network in the process sphere, and so has her finger on the pulse when it comes to what trends are happening, what the next 2, 3, 5 years of business process management is going to look like. Then we kick off the second half of the year with our first German episode. So one of my colleagues from GBTEC, GBTEC is the, I should have mentioned this at the start, but GBTEC is the sponsor of the podcast. one of my colleagues over in head office in Germany conducts a Process Pioneers episode. I actually don't know what they said because I don't speak German myself, but that's okay. If you speak German, that's a great episode for you, I am sure. And so go have a listen to that one. Now, let's just quickly skim through the next 6 months. We caught up with a range of people. Maybe I won't sort of mention all their names, but defining your boundaries, what we can learn from the Japanese approach to process management. Change is part and parcel of everything that we do. Things are changing. If you're not changing, you're dying. And so, and even dying is changing in a way, in a funny way. So change is what we're doing. So how can we become experts at change, especially when it comes to process management? Respecting people, bringing stakeholders along for the journey, showing them the results. I'm just going through the different topics that we covered. So how can you prove those results? Treasure hunting. So that ties into what are the critical core processes that we can identify that's going to give us the biggest return, the best result. What are those things we really need to focus on that's going to unlock significant value for the organizations that we're working with? What's the purpose? Again, defining the why, having a clear why, a clear purpose for the work that we're doing. Keep it practical. That one was with Paul Dean. Paul Dean has a fantastic YouTube channel. He's currently a senior business improvement lead, and he has quite the network on LinkedIn. So he's often putting out really valuable pieces of content and oftentimes getting seen by tens of thousands of people as well. So connect with Paul. He is a great connection for you to have. Okay. There has to be a need, educating your stakeholders, 6 steps to sustainability. That was a fantastic conversation with Cameron Zabel, head of process and analysis at a large financial services organization here in Australia. Then we caught up with Samuel Holzman. I think it's Holzman, expert enterprise architect and business architect practitioner. And we really focus on the enterprise architecture side of this whole domain. And so we're touching on data, we're touching on process, we're touching on agility. Samuel is well known for his work in the enterprise architecture space. So that's a fantastic conversation. Demonstrating the value. Is process variability killing your business? So we talk about standardizing your processes. If you don't standardize your process, you've got all of these variables. You've got a lot of processes that are really inefficient. You've got very little process compliance. Your people aren't complying to the most optimum process that's been defined. Then we had a great conversation with Michael Fox. Process doesn't care about your job. Obviously, we're working with people, so we need to be, be mindful that people have feelings, but processes they don't care about feelings so much. And so, understanding that a process, the main purpose is for the process to help the organization achieve what it is trying to achieve. That is a very good conversation. Michael is, let's just say he doesn't tippy-toe around tough topics. He has some strong opinions. That was a fantastic conversation. So highly recommend that. Highly recommend you connect with Michael on LinkedIn as well. Then we have, what have we got here? Why are you doing this? Again, another conversation focused on the why, on the purpose. That's with Tim Ruthell. He is the business analysis and change practice manager at a large organization in Melbourne, in Australia, in Victoria. He's also part of the IBA, International Institute of Business Analysis, on the board here in Australia. Next episode is also with someone from the IBA, Gary Iron, Senior Business Analyst here in Australia. Gary has worked across government, across private. He knows his stuff when it comes to business analysis, and we talk about starting with high value. Then we're also discussing in next episodes attitude, culture, behavior, using the language of your audience with Ben Donnelly Aquilina, Business Process Excellence Lead. And then we come to the episode we've just released a week ago, which is Never Lead with Technology. That is with Tony Benedict, the President and Director of the Association of Business Process Management Practitioners on a global level. So Tony lives in the States, I believe, and he oversees ABPMP and was involved in the very early days of that association. If you're not a member and you'd like to be, please look up ABPMP, Association of Business Process Management Practitioners. Lots of courses, lots of value there that you can glean from that's going to support the work that you are doing. And that episode tipped over the 1 hour mark. So if it goes for over an hour, it means that I didn't want to press the stop recording button. So we just let it continue, let it roll. So those are, that's a very high level snapshot of all of the conversations that we've had over the year. And there were some fantastic conversations. I certainly gleaned a lot. Feel free to listen to them, whenever you've got the chance to, whether it's on the weekend, whether you're walking your dog, you're commuting to work, wherever you might be. Chuck it on double speed or 1.5, and there's a lot of content there. I think with 40 episodes, you're looking at least 20 to 30 hours of business process management sort of advice there just from this year. And we've got all the episodes from the previous years as well. But as I said at the start, these episodes are short, so to speak, as in we can only fit so very little information in them. So by all means, treat these episodes as a way to connect with other peers in the industry. Let's say that there's always something we can glean from other people. And when we're trying to do our best work in the organizations that we're delivering value in, we can have the upper hand by connecting and networking with other people in the industry that are at other organizations that are maybe further ahead than us, maybe slightly behind of us, maybe working on the same challenges, the same obstacles. But there's a lot that we can glean from each other. So use this podcast series as a way to network and to educate yourself as well. But I might wrap it up there. I think I probably went a little bit longer than I was expecting to. But if you've gotten something from this episode, and this episode may not be as educational as some of my others, but I wanted to do a recap of the year, and even just whizzing through all of those episodes there, it's brought back a lot of great memories from these conversations, and so many new relationships I've made, some good sort of industry friends that I can continue having conversations with. We'll also be looking at getting a number of these people back on Process Pioneers next year. So we've already scheduled probably our first at least 10 episodes, I'd say for the new year. So we're already we're releasing about once a week at the moment. We may increase the frequency, but for the time being, it's once a week. That's 20% through next year. So that's fantastic. But look out for those live episodes. We'd love to have you participate. If you've gotten value out of any of the episodes in this series, please give us a rating, a review. That would mean a lot to us. We want to help continue to foster and boost out, promote business process management throughout the world. And if you have any feedback for me, I am always open for feedback. I want this series to be highly beneficial. If you think there's something I can improve, if you want me to make them shorter, if you want me to make them longer, if you want me to do more live sessions, if you want me to get another host to replace me, then let me know, because ultimately I just want to continue to foster this community and help to drive value into this community. So, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to this. If you've made it all the way to this point, it's been an absolute pleasure. Merry Christmas. Have a happy new year, and we'll see you in 2023.